Prepare yourself, because what I'm about to reveal was once considered too dangerous to share openly. A hidden practice buried inside Japan's ancient Shakuhachi tradition. A technique that allowed Zen masters to lower their blood pressure on command, using nothing but a single, controlled stream of breath. You've heard of meditation. You've heard of mindful breathing. But this is different. This is forbidden physiology, a level of internal control so precise that it unsettled rulers, confused warriors, and baffled scientists for centuries. The Shakuhachi flute was never merely an instrument. It was a breathing weapon, a tool of nervous system mastery disguised as music. One note, one long, haunting tone, and the entire body of the practitioner would shift, heart rate slowing, pressure dropping, mind dissolving. A silent descent into a state most people will never experience. And here's the part that should alarm you. Most people today are breathing in a way that silently destroys their cardiovascular stability. Every shallow inhale sends a signal of threat. Every rushed exhale activates stress pathways. Your nervous system is not anxious. It is miswired by modern breathing patterns. You feel tired, scattered, irritable, overwhelmed. Not because life is too much, but because your breath is working against you. The ancient monks knew this. They saw the breath as the foundation of power or collapse. So they guarded their technique. They hid it behind ritual, behind mystery, behind bamboo flutes and silent training halls. Only a few initiates were permitted to learn the internal mechanics that could suppress fear, control pressure, and enter a state of no mind at will. And today, for the first time, you are stepping into that threshold. When you understand how shakuhachi breathing actually works, when you feel what a true controlled exhale can do to your pulse, when you realize that your blood pressure can be influenced in seconds, you will never go back to the way you used to breathe. Because this is not relaxation. This is not calmness. This is dominion over your internal world. The Komusō monks, the faceless wanderers with woven baskets over their heads, protected this knowledge for a reason. They knew that whoever controlled the breath controlled the body. Whoever controlled the body controlled the mind. Whoever controlled the mind could not be controlled by anything else. And now the door is open. The question is whether you're willing to step through it. You feel it, don't you? That constant internal pressure, that subtle tightness in your chest, that restless pulse beating faster than it should. Modern life has rewired your nervous system into a battlefield. And the most terrifying part is this. You think this is normal. But let me tell you the truth. A truth most people are too scared to face. Your body is not malfunctioning. It is reacting. Reacting to the shallow, chaotic breathing pattern you've fallen into. Every short inhale is a signal of danger. Every rushed exhale is a command to stay alert. Slowly, silently, you're teaching your heart to live in a permanent state of emergency. And you wonder why your blood pressure is rising. Why sleep doesn't restore you. Why your mind snaps at the smallest annoyance. It's not because you're weak. It's because your nervous system has been hijacked, pushed into sympathetic overdrive, drowning in cortisol, trapped in a loop where your heart believes you're being hunted even while you sit at your desk. Ask yourself this. When was the last time you truly exhaled? Not just pushed air out of your lungs, but released tension from the inside? When was the last time your breath told your brain, you are safe? Most people can't answer, and that's the problem. Your breath has become fragmented, shallow, mechanical, a survival pattern instead of a living rhythm. This is why your blood pressure climbs. This is why your heart pounds louder at night. This is why your thoughts feel scattered, sharp, uncontrollable. And here's the sinister twist. You don't notice it happening, because chronic dysregulation becomes invisible, like a slow leak in the foundation of your house. One day everything simply collapses, and you call it stress, aging, or bad genetics. No, it's breath. Your breath, distorted, restricted, under attack. But what if I told you there exists a way to reverse it? A method so precise, so controlled, that it can drag your nervous system out of the flames and drop it back into balance with the force of ancient intention. This is why the Shakuhachi masters were feared. They learned how to do what most people can't even imagine. Use a single, elongated exhale to bend their blood pressure downward at will. They could override panic, silence their heartbeat, shift their entire physiology into stillness with one breath. And right now, while you feel overwhelmed, overworked, overstimulated, and overstressed, this technique is exactly the thing your nervous system is begging for. The question is, are you willing to unlearn everything you thought you knew about breathing? To understand why the breath of Shakuhachi masters can regulate blood pressure, you must first step into a world that almost vanished. A world wrapped in secrecy, ritual, and danger. During Japan's Edo period, there existed a wandering order of monks known as the Komusō. They hid their faces beneath deep woven baskets, moving like silent spirits through villages. People feared them, respected them, whispered about them, not because they carried weapons, but because they carried a flute, a bamboo flute, a deceptively simple instrument called the shakuhachi. But here's what most people never knew. The Komusō didn't play it for entertainment. They played it as a form of internal alchemy, a practice so potent it became entangled with espionage, mind training, and physiological control. The melodies they produced weren't mere notes. They were breathing codes, techniques engineered to shift consciousness and alter the body's inner rhythms with surgical precision. This is why certain shakuhachi pieces were labeled forbidden, restricted to within the order. Some were said to bring the practitioner into a trance-like state. Others could slow the pulse to an almost unnatural stillness. The Komusō called this ritual suizen, blowing zen. But don't let the gentle name fool you. Suizen was not passive meditation. It was a method of weaponizing the breath, transforming exhalation into a tool for absolute nervous system mastery. Imagine it. A monk standing motionless on a forest path, basket hiding his identity, flute lifted to his lips. One long, unbroken tone vibrates through the air. Villagers watch from afar, unaware that what they're hearing is not music. It's a biological command, a signal traveling through the monk's entire body, down the vagus nerve, into the heart, instructing it to soften its beat. And here's the eerie part. The government eventually noticed. They realized these monks possessed too much internal control, too much emotional stability, too much resilience. In a time when psychological manipulation and surveillance mattered, such a skill was dangerous. The Fuke sect was eventually suppressed, its teachings scattered, its rituals hidden or lost. But fragments survived, enough for us to decode the physiology behind their power. Because behind every haunting shakuhachi note is a truth. These monks had discovered a breathing mechanism centuries before neuroscience could explain it. They knew how to shape the exhale, modulate pressure in the throat and lips, and ride the vibration of the bamboo into a state of deep parasympathetic dominance. Their breath became a doorway, a way to slip beneath thought, beneath emotion, into the neurological basement where blood pressure is regulated. They were not just flute players. They were architects of the nervous system. And now, for the first time, you're about to see what they actually unlocked. The hidden science behind their breath. Now we enter the core. The mechanism. The part that modern science tries to explain with equations and diagrams, but which the Shakuhachi masters felt directly in their bones centuries earlier. What they discovered was not mystical. It was biological. Yet it operates so deeply within the body that most people never access it in their entire lifetime. Let me reveal the 3 physiological forces that Shakuhachi breathing manipulates with terrifying precision. The vagus nerve, CO2 tolerance, and the baroreflex loop. These are the control panels of your cardiovascular system. And the Shakuhachi technique, whether you play the flute or simply imitate its breath, is a direct hack into all 3 simultaneously. Start with the vagus nerve. This single nerve is the master switch of your parasympathetic system, the branch responsible for rest, recovery, and blood pressure reduction. When activated, it sends a wave of calm through your heart, slowing its pace, relaxing blood vessels like opening the gates of a dam. A slow, elongated Shakuhachi-style exhale stretches the vagus nerve like a violin string. The vibration of air leaving the lips, the slight pressure built in the throat, the resonance of a steady tone, all of it acts as a mechanical massage to vagal fibers. But here's the part that borders on forbidden knowledge. The longer the exhale, the stronger the vagal response. And Shakuhachi players don't just exhale for 5 seconds. They extend that breath into a controlled stream that lasts 10, 12, even 20 seconds. Each second is another signal to the heart. Slow down, release, yield. Next comes CO2 tolerance, a concept most people misunderstand. CO2 is not a waste gas. It is the key that unlocks oxygen delivery into your tissues. When your tolerance is low, your body panics easily. Your breathing becomes erratic. Your blood pressure spikes. But when you learn to hold CO2 just a little longer, something extraordinary happens. Your blood vessels relax. Oxygen is delivered more efficiently. Your nervous system shifts from threat to safety. The Shakuhachi breath naturally increases CO2 levels by prolonging the exhale. This creates a subtle rise in carbon dioxide, enough to reset the body's chemoreceptors and teach the nervous system a new baseline of calm. Imagine raising the threshold of your internal alarm system so that life no longer triggers you so easily. That is the hidden power of CO2 adaptation. And then there is the baroreflex, the body's built-in blood pressure regulator. Think of it as a set of stretch sensors in your arteries. When they detect a long, smooth exhale, they send a direct message to the brainstem. Pressure is dropping. Reduce heart rate now. It's like hacking into the motherboard of your cardiovascular system. This is why even a single Shakuhachi tone can feel like a descent into stillness. The combination of slow airflow, sustained mouth pressure, and rhythmic resonance creates a signal so unmistakable that your heart has no choice but to obey. Your sympathetic system, the stress engine, shuts down. Parasympathetic dominance takes over. Your blood vessels open like fans unfolding. Blood pressure shifts downward with a grace that feels almost supernatural. But it isn't magic. It's physics. It's biochemistry. It's neural circuitry responding to a pattern so ancient, so precise, that it becomes a master key to the human body. This is why Shakuhachi breath isn't just relaxing. It's regulatory. It changes the actual operating system of your physiology. It places your heart, lungs, and brain on a synchronized frequency. A frequency that science now calls theta range coherence, a pattern associated with meditation, creativity, emotional stability, and, critically, cardiovascular balance. The Komusō didn't know the terms vagal tone or baroreflex sensitivity, but they understood something deeper. Control the breath, and you control the pulse. Control the pulse, and you control the mind. You are now standing on the edge of that same understanding. But what comes next? The true Shakuhachi protocol is where everything changes. Now we dive into the phenomenon the Komusō guarded with almost religious intensity. A principle they called kokyu-ryoku, the power of the breath. But don't let the gentle wording deceive you. Kokyu-ryoku is not about breathing more. It's about breathing with such deliberate control that the body has no choice but to reorganize itself around the exhale. It is the hidden engine behind Shakuhachi mastery, and the true reason their breath could manipulate blood pressure like a dial. To understand kokyu-ryoku, you must abandon the modern idea of breathing as something automatic. For the Komusō, breath was architecture. Every inhale built structure. Every exhale shaped the internal landscape. And the sound of the flute wasn't music. It was a map, guiding the breath along a precise mechanical pathway. Here's what happens inside the body when kokyu-ryoku is activated. First, the inhale is intentionally minimized. Not shallow, minimized. You draw air in softly, as if you're trying not to disturb the silence. This has a counterintuitive effect. It prevents sudden spikes in heart rate and keeps the sympathetic nervous system from grabbing the controls. It is the opposite of the desperate, noisy breathing people fall into when stressed. Then comes the exhale, the true heart of kokyu-ryoku. A shakuhachi exhale is not just long. It is pressurized, shaped, and channeled. Air escapes through a narrow aperture formed by the lips, creating a stream so smooth and continuous that it almost feels unreal. That slow resistance, the slight pressure between your diaphragm and your mouth, is what activates the baroreflex at its deepest level. Your arteries sense the stability of the airflow and respond by relaxing, softening, dilating. This is the part the world missed. This is the forbidden mechanism hidden inside the sound. The flute vibrates not because of force, but because of precision. The body enters a state where the diaphragm moves like a measured piston. The lips create micro-resonance that massages vagal fibers, and the airflow becomes a single unbroken line. This is kokyu-ryoku, breath turned into a blade, cutting through noise, chaos, and tension inside the nervous system. There is also the unmistakable rhythm of shakuhachi breath, the way it cycles between tension and release. Each controlled exhale sends a wave through the autonomic nervous system, locking it into parasympathetic dominance. Imagine your body as a stormy sea, and this breath is a steady moon that forces the waves to obey. Slowly, inevitably, the chaos collapses into calm. But the most dramatic effect happens in the brain. The prolonged exhale shifts neural activity into the theta range, the same frequency associated with deep meditation and trance states. The Komusō described this as entering the space between thoughts. Modern neuroscience calls it prefrontal downregulation, where stress circuits shut down and the body enters a state of internal neutrality. In this state, blood pressure doesn't merely drop, it recalibrates. Your mind stops sending threat signals. Your heart stops accelerating unnecessarily. Your arteries loosen their grip. Your entire system slides into coherence. This is why, even without the flute, imitating the shakuhachi breath can regulate hypertension with shocking efficiency. You are reproducing the exact internal conditions that once allowed monks to stand unmoving for hours, lowering their pulse until their presence felt ghost-like. Kokyu Ryoku is not force. It is influence. Not effort, but precision. Not escape, but mastery. And now, for the first time, you will learn how to generate this controlled internal power on your own, without bamboo, without a melody, using nothing but your breath and the ancient blueprint the Komusō left behind. The protocol begins next. Here it is. The protocol. The part the Komusō never wrote down, the part they transmitted only through presence, through breath, through the invisible language of technique. What you are about to learn is not imitation. It is the engine of Shakuhachi breathing, rebuilt for the modern nervous system. You don't need the flute. You only need the architecture of the breath. The exact internal mechanics that trigger the vagus nerve, amplify CO2 tolerance, and unlock Kokyu Ryoku. Follow this with absolute precision. Every detail matters. Every mistake weakens the effect. Start with posture. Sit or stand tall, but not rigid. Imagine a thin thread lifting the crown of your head. Your spine is not straight. It is alive. The Komusō believed that a collapsed posture traps the breath and traps the mind. When the chest is lifted too high, you create artificial tension. When it collapses, the diaphragm cannot descend. You must find the neutral line, the hidden vertical. This is where breath moves freely. Now, place your tongue gently against the roof of your mouth, just behind the upper teeth. Not pressed, just resting. This is crucial. It stabilizes the airway, softens the throat, and allows the exhale to stream without turbulence. Turbulence equals noise. Noise equals stress. You are building a silent corridor for air. Next, shape your lips. Imagine you are about to blow on the surface of a cup of tea, enough to move the steam, not enough to spill the liquid. Your lips should form a small oval aperture, slightly forward, relaxed but deliberate. Too wide, and you lose pressure. Too tight, and you trigger tension. You are sculpting a narrow gate that air must pass through. This is the moment where the protocol truly begins. Step 1. The soft inhale. Inhale through the nose for 2 to 3 seconds. No more. Make the breath quiet, almost undetectable. You are not filling the lungs. You are simply inviting air in. The Komusō believed that the inhale must never overpower the exhale. The inhale sets the stage. The exhale writes the script. Step 2. The pressurized exhale. Exhale through the lips for 8 to 12 seconds. Yes, that long. The key is not duration alone, but pressure. Feel a gentle resistance as the air exits. Imagine the breath is sliding across a blade. Smooth, controlled, unbroken. Your goal is a single continuous stream of air. No wobble, no shaking, no acceleration. The baroreceptors in your arteries respond to smoothness, not force. Keep your shoulders still. Keep the throat soft. The power does not come from pushing. It comes from shaping. As you exhale, notice a subtle tremor below the ribs. That is your diaphragm stabilizing. That is Kokyu Ryoku waking up. Step 3. The silent pause. At the end of the exhale, pause for 1 to 2 seconds. Not a breath hold, just stillness. This moment is the secret hinge of the technique. CO2 rises slightly. The nervous system receives a signal of safety. Your vagus nerve begins descending into deeper activation. Step 4. Repeat but never force. Perform 10 rounds. The first 3 feel gentle. The next 3 feel calm. Rounds 7 through 10 are where the nervous system yields. This is where your pulse drops, where your chest loosens, where your mind stops clinging to its alarms. But the protocol has another level, a refinement that transforms the breath into a genuine shakuhachi practice. The micro-vibration layer. As you exhale, let the smallest hint of sound escape your lips. Not a melody. Not a whistle. Just a whisper of tone created by air brushing the aperture. This microvibration stimulates mechanoreceptors in the throat and upper airway, enhancing vagal signaling. It is the closest approximation to shakuhachi resonance without the flute. This is what calms the heart. This is what softens blood pressure, not force, not relaxation. Resonant control, the 3 forbidden mistakes. If you do any of the following, the effect collapses. Over-inhaling. It spikes heart rate. Exhaling with muscular force. It triggers sympathetic activation, letting the exhale wobble. It disrupts the baroreflex. Precision is everything. When done correctly, you will feel a spreading warmth in the face, a loosening in the throat, a slowing behind the breastbone. These are not sensations of relaxation. They are signs of neural recalibration. And after 10 rounds, something unmistakable happens. Your body enters the state, the Komusō called munokokyu, breath without self, the moment where blood pressure, pulse, and mind begin to synchronize into a single, coherent rhythm. You have now stepped into the internal chamber, the ancient monks protected with silence. Now that you've learned the mechanics, you must understand what actually happens inside your body when you perform this breath. Because shakuhachi breathing doesn't just feel calming, it produces measurable, trackable physiological shifts. The Komusō described these changes in metaphors. The heart falling into stillness, the river of breath widening, the mind cooling like night air. But today, we can measure them in numbers, rhythms, and patterns. And when you see what this breath does, even in the first 2 minutes, you'll understand why it was considered dangerous to those in power. Let's start with the most immediate biomarker, heart rate variability, HRV. Within the first few cycles of shakuhachi breathing, HRV begins to rise. This is not an opinion. It is the nervous system physically shifting toward parasympathetic dominance. HRV rising means your heart is no longer locked in defensive rhythm. It has space between beats. It has flexibility. A flexible heart is a calm heart. A calm heart produces lower pressure. And if you pay attention, you will actually feel that space emerging. The pulse softens. The edges of your heartbeat blur. The body stops bracing. This is the first sign that the vagus nerve has taken command. Next comes the blood pressure response. Slower at first, then unmistakable. In the first 2 minutes, your systolic pressure begins to drop slightly as your vessels dilate in response to the prolonged exhale. You won't see numbers yet, but you'll feel the shift. A warmth spreading across the skin, the face relaxing, the jaw unclenching. These are micromarkers of vascular release. At the 5-minute mark, baroreflex sensitivity improves. This is crucial. It means your arteries get better at detecting pressure changes and correcting them. Most people with hypertension have a blunted baroreflex. The system is sluggish, unresponsive, almost asleep. Shakuhachi breath wakes it up. The Komusō described this as the gatekeeper awakening. And they were right. This is the gatekeeper of your cardiovascular stability. At the 10-minute mark, a powerful shift occurs in what neuroscientists call autonomic coherence. This is the moment your breathing pattern, heart rhythm, and blood pressure regulation begin synchronizing with one another. It feels like your entire system clicks into alignment. People describe it as, my mind feels quieter than I can explain. My heartbeat feels like it's sinking. I feel stable, anchored, present. This is not relaxation. This is regulation. The reorganization of your nervous system around a single coherent rhythm. And then something even deeper happens. Your brainwave activity begins sliding downward into the theta band, a slow, inward-facing frequency typically accessed only in meditation, hypnosis, prayer, or the early moments before sleep. This state dramatically reduces the brain's threat calculations. When threat detection decreases, arterial tension decreases. When arterial tension decreases, blood pressure follows. This is why Shakuhachi monks could stand motionless in silence for hours. Their brains were operating in a rhythm that made emotional turbulence impossible. Now, here is where the transformation becomes visible. Not in your feelings, but in data. If you were wearing a blood pressure monitor, you would see a reduction in systolic pressure, a softening of diastolic levels, a slowing, stabilizing pulse. And if you were using an HRV tracker, you would see peaks, valleys, waveforms becoming smooth and undisturbed. A coherence pattern forming, a sign that your heart and breath are speaking the same language. But beyond numbers, there is a subjective shift, a moment of internal descent, a drop into what the Komusō called the still chamber. You know this chamber when you feel it. Thoughts lose their grip. Anxiety stops moving. Your presence deepens. And here is the secret most people never learn. This state is not fragile. Once accessed, it lingers. Even after you stop breathing this way, the vagal tone remains elevated. The baroreflex stays primed. Blood pressure stays lowered. The body remembers. This is not temporary relief. It is retraining, the slow rewriting of your autonomic patterns. And once the body learns this language of breath, it begins searching for it on its own. You're not just calming yourself, you are reprogramming yourself. The next part will show you exactly how fast and how permanently this transformation takes hold. Now we move into the timeline, the transformation curve. Because what Shakuhachi breath does to you is not a momentary trick or a temporary calm. It is progressive, layered, cumulative. The nervous system adapts to whatever you feed it, and when you feed it coherent breath patterns, the adaptation is profound. The Komusō understood this intuitively. Modern neuroscience confirms it clinically. Let me show you what happens when you commit to this practice for 7 days, 21 days, and 45 days. Not subjectively, biologically. Day 1 to day 7. The autonomic reset begins within the first week. The body enters what I call the rewiring phase. It's subtle, but unmistakable. Each time you perform the Shakuhachi breath, your vagus nerve strengthens, almost like a muscle learning its role again. The chaotic spikes in heart rate begin to flatten. Your threshold for stress shifts. You don't get triggered as quickly. You don't escalate as easily. You sense the difference in small moments, traffic, deadlines, conversations, unexpected pressure. Things that used to agitate you now hit differently. The Komusō wrote about this phenomenon centuries ago. They called it the thinning of the noise. What they meant was that the reactive layer of your nervous system begins to dissolve. Modern physiology would describe it as reduced sympathetic hyperactivity and increased CO2 tolerance, which stabilizes blood vessel tone. By day 7, many people notice their morning blood pressure readings dipping slightly lower than usual. Not dramatically, but consistently. That consistency is the first sign of real change. Day 7 to day 21. The cardiovascular shift takes hold. This is where the transformation becomes visible and measurable. Around the 3rd week, the body no longer treats this breath as a foreign technique. It treats it as a baseline expectation. The baroreflex becomes more sensitive. Your arteries respond faster and more efficiently to pressure changes. That responsiveness is one of the strongest predictors of long-term cardiovascular health. you'll also notice deeper changes. Sleep becomes heavier, more restorative. Your pulse during rest drops. Your emotional surges begin losing their force. Clarity increases. Internal noise decreases. Your breath spontaneously slows throughout the day. One of the most extraordinary effects emerges here. Your body begins breathing like a shakuhachi practitioner even when you're not practicing. Longer exhales, smoother airflow, less tension in the intercostal muscles, more fluid diaphragm motion. This is the nervous system learning efficiency. This is autonomic intelligence awakening. By the end of 21 days, systolic pressure frequently drops by measurable margins. Some people experience reductions of 5 to 10 millimeters. Others experience deeper drops, depending on baseline stress and reactivity. No supplements, no medication alterations, just breath, just precision. Day 21 today, Verdir deep repatterning, the permanent shift. This phase is the true threshold, the place where ancient practice meets modern neuroplasticity. By the 6th week, your nervous system begins forming a new default operating mode. The sympathetic system still exists, of course, but it no longer dominates. Parasympathetic tone becomes the new foundation. Your body starts behaving like the Komusō described in their writings, unmoved by storms, breath guiding the heart, mind rooted in unshakable ground. Physiologically, this translates to lower resting blood pressure, higher resting HRV, more stable vascular tone, better oxygen delivery efficiency, reduced cortisol spikes, improved emotional regulation through the prefrontal cortex. You become harder to disturb, not numb, stable, not passive, centered. Even your facial muscles change. The jaw loosens, the brow softens, the throat opens. You begin to carry yourself with the same quiet presence the Komusō were known for, an internal stillness that others feel before you speak. By day 45, the transformation is not fragile. It no longer depends on effort. The breath has rewritten your patterns, your reflexes, your autonomic rhythms. Blood pressure no longer surges from small stressors. Your heart no longer races unnecessarily. Your mind no longer spirals from minor disturbances. Your system has learned stillness. Your breath has become medicine. Your presence has become power. This is the point where ancient tradition and modern physiology converge. The breath becomes identity. And now, before you move forward, you must understand the risks, the mistakes, the conditions that can break this practice if ignored. Those come next. Before you go any further, you must understand something most teachers will never tell you. A technique this powerful is not gentle. It is not harmless. It is not a toy. Anything capable of lowering blood pressure, slowing the pulse, and shifting brainwave states can also destabilize you if done incorrectly. This is why the Komusō protected their methods, why the Fuke monks taught in silence, why certain practices were restricted, even outlawed. Power without precision becomes danger. So listen closely. What I'm about to tell you is not optional. These are the critical warnings, the fault lines you cannot step on. Break these rules, and the practice collapses. Or worse, the nervous system reacts in ways you do not want. The first danger is chasing intensity. Modern people are addicted to extremes. Breathe harder, hold longer, push deeper. But the shakuhachi breath is the opposite. It is subtle, controlled. If you force the exhale, you trigger the sympathetic system. If you extend the pause too long, you activate CO2 panic. If you pull too much air on the inhale, your heart rate jumps. Every one of these errors can produce dizziness, tension, or a rebound spike in pressure. The Komusō warned, power chases stillness, not strain. If your breath feels dramatic, you're doing it wrong. The second danger is breathing through anxiety. Many people attempt this technique while in a panic or emotional storm, hoping it will switch off the chaos instantly. But remember, the breath shapes the nervous system, and the nervous system shapes the breath. If you try to overlay precision on top of adrenaline, you create internal conflict, two command systems fighting at the same time. This can lead to chest tightness, uneven exhale, or a sense of internal pressure. The correct approach is to begin with gentler ratios, shorter exhales, and allow the body to settle before deepening the technique. The Komusō called this opening the door before entering the room. The third danger is mental interference. This practice collapses when you try to control it with thought, overthinking the timing, the lips, the sound, the diaphragm. All of it stiffens the system. A stiff system cannot regulate pressure. The breath must feel guided, not executed. The Komusō had a phrase, "The flute plays the monk," meaning, once the structure is set, the breath must move on its own. If you micromanage the process, you sever the connection between the exhale and the autonomic response. Let the breath become a stream, not a calculation. The fourth danger is ignoring physiological signals. Dizziness is not mastery. Tingling is not enlightenment. Pressure in the head is not progress. These are signs of imbalance. Too much exhale pressure, too little inhale volume, or CO2 buildup exceeding tolerance. When this happens, stop immediately. Allow the breath to reset. The Komusō emphasized neutrality before depth. If the body resists, it is giving you information. The fifth danger is believing the breath replaces medical care. This technique can lower blood pressure, yes, profoundly. But if you have uncontrolled hypertension, cardiovascular conditions, respiratory disorders, or are on medications affecting pressure or rhythm, you must integrate this practice slowly. Not because the breath is harmful, but because it is effective. Too effective. Dropping blood pressure too quickly can cause fatigue, lightheadedness, or instability. Ancient practitioners understood this intuitively. Modern practitioners must understand it scientifically. And finally, the sixth danger, the most subtle and the most serious. Treating the practice as relaxation instead of recalibration. Relaxation ends when the session ends. Recalibration continues into the next hour, the next day, the next week. When you approach this breath casually, you miss the transformation. When you approach it as a ritual, structured, consistent, deliberate, the nervous system adapts in ways that become permanent. This is why the Komusō did not practice Shakuhachi. They lived it. They breathed in patterns that sculpted their identity. Their presence was their proof. If you break these rules, you do not fail the breath. The breath fails you. The power dissolves. The nervous system resists. The results vanish. But if you honor the boundaries, if you follow the precision, if you respect the technique as the monks once did, then you earn access to the final step, the challenge. This is the moment everything turns. Because a technique like this, ancient, precise, dangerously effective, means nothing if it stays inside your mind. Knowledge doesn't lower your blood pressure. Intention doesn't retrain your nervous system. Only action does. The Komusō understood this with absolute clarity. Breath was not philosophy. Breath was not theory. Breath was practice, repeated until the body transformed from the inside out. So now I'm speaking directly to you. You've seen the mechanism. You've felt the logic. You've witnessed the pathway from chaos to control. And now you stand at the same threshold the Shakuhachi monks stood at centuries ago, the point where you either step forward and claim the internal mastery that has been denied to most of the modern world? Or you stay exactly where you are, trapped in the reactive storm of shallow breathing, rising pressure, noisy thoughts, and a nervous system that never quite settles. Here is the challenge. For the next 7 days, you perform the Shakuhachi breath for 10 minutes. No excuses, no breaks, no negotiation. 10 minutes of precision. 10 minutes of shaping the exhale like a blade. 10 minutes of awakening vagal tone. 10 minutes of telling your heart with absolute authority. You will beat on my terms, not on fear's terms. 7 days, 70 minutes total. That's all I'm asking. Because in 7 days, the shift begins. In 7 days, your baroreflex starts waking up. In 7 days, your emotional reactivity weakens. In 7 days, your blood pressure begins bending. In 7 days, you feel the first taste of internal power. The same power the Komusō protected, with silence for generations. But if you want more, if you want the deeper transformation, the recalibration that reshapes your operating system, then the challenge extends. 21 days for stability. 45 days for identity. 45 days until this breath becomes your default rhythm. Until your nervous system stops living in emergency mode. Until your pulse is steady even in chaos. Until your mind no longer snaps into panic from shadows that used to control you. That is what is waiting on the other side of this challenge. Not calm, not peace. Something far stronger. Autonomic sovereignty. The rare state in which your body listens to you, not to fear, not to stress, not to old patterns you didn't choose. The Komusō carried this presence everywhere they went. People felt it before they saw them. A stillness so deep it bordered on supernatural. A stability that could not be shaken. Now it's your turn to claim that. So here is the final question. And I ask it the same way the monks asked their initiates centuries ago. Will you be mastered by your breath, or will you master it? 7 days begins now. Your physiology is waiting. Your nervous system is listening. Your heart is ready to obey. Step into the challenge. Step into control. Step into the breath that once shaped ghosts in bamboo forests, and will now shape you.